Namo Amida-butsu. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are, in whichever realms of existence you are, whatever mind states you're in, whatever conditions you're in. As always, you are welcome to my channel. Today, wanted to do another Mappo life video. I've been doing a lot of those lately. Because the times we live in, the cycle of Mappo we're in is very, very Mappo. Let's just say, to put it mildly. Interesting times indeed. And anyway, it was a beautiful sort of very late spring day. So I thought I'd do another video from the greenhouse. Doing it in the greenhouse today because it's kind of off and on raining, so I'm going to kind of stay out of the rain if it comes on again while I'm recording. But anyway, so yeah, one of the aspects of Mappo is the way power is used or abused, and used completely unwisely and uncompassionately. The way the world works is not what we've been taught. It's not what the mainstream media wants you to believe. It's not what mainstream politics wants you to believe. It's not what anything in the mainstream, anything in the kind of mainstream conventional, anything from the mainstream conventional world, whatever institution is, whatever, or your family, or whatever, wherever you've learned things from, the education system, just your culture, your family, as I said, anything in the conventional sense that you have learned, that we have learned, is wrong. It's just utter BS. Might have some truth to it, and might be true, like the values of it, the perceptions, the ethics, the ideals of it might be good in, say, an ascending kalpa. At some point in the ascending kalpa when things are getting really good, or even just any time in the ascending kalpa, these things we've been taught would probably work. Would probably be actually happening, because in an ascending kalpa, in the ascending side of a kalpa, you have virtue, as beings are being born in the human realm. With every generation, virtue is increasing, as is the lifespan. Virtue increases with every generation, with every new being being born in time, consecutively in time. That increases because the people being born in an ascending kalpa they have the good karmic causes and conditions that they'll live more virtuous lives, more wise lives, more compassionate lives. So all these things that we've been taught are not necessarily bad or wrong, or that we've been we've been assimilated into us or inculcated into us through culture and all these different things I was talking about, are not necessarily wrong. They just don't apply. They just don't apply. They don't apply to Mappo. That's not how things operate in Mappo. The way things operate in Mappo is, and and what I should say about this before I continue is this is the reason I see all this stuff is because of the light of Amida, because of Buddhism primarily, not primarily, just well because of the light of Amida primarily, but initially it was in it was always Amida's light. Let me just say that. It's always initially and primarily Amida's light, even before I knew about Amida's light operating in my life, in this existence, in this rebirth. Was always operating, and that's what was opening my eyes to things and allowing me to see things that ordinarily, wouldn't have seen. And different, using different causes and conditions, but Buddhism Bodhisattva is working in the, in the flow of Amida's working, the flow of Amida's power, and the flow of Amida's vow, working in my life through different skillful means and causes and conditions to allow me to kind of see things, even before, this was even before I even knew about Jodo Shinshu or even knew about Pure Land. And just had, started to, first, years of encountering Buddhism. It was also coincided with me waking up to a lot of things about how things worked in life. Just the beginnings of, being able to see how life actually works. Rather than in politics and the world and societies and cultures and nations and all of that, how that actually functions, rather than how we're taught, we're told, or the conventional institutions or mainstream institutions want you to believe they operate. So and I think because with Buddhism, that's partly Buddhism is partly responsible for that. Obviously, again, Amida's light behind it all. But if you're a Buddhist in any sense, your normalcy bias, if you really are taking in to your heart and mind, if you're really taking in what Buddhism is teaching you, and really taking the implications of that and reflecting on that and looking around and observing the world in light of that, your normalcy bias should be weakened right from the beginning. It should already starting to be weakened. So my normalcy bias was gone a long time ago. Kind of coinciding with my exploration, but just before, actually. It was in high school. My normalcy bias started to be really the beginnings of it being weakened. And then, basically my senior year in high school, I actually did started looking at some Buddhist texts or texts about Buddhism at my library, local library, and at the high school library and things like that. Yes, I lived before the internet. I lived before Google. I lived before all those things. And I'm very grateful I did. I'm very grateful I was born before all this. Because I'm just glad. I'm just a different, it gives you an advantage, I think, to know both worlds. I know the world before the internet and social media and all this BS that we have now in all this, so-called big tech BS that is terrible for us. I'm sorry, we have to use it. You kind of have to use it, but it's not good for us. It's really not. And I'm sure it exists in the ascending kalpa. It's probably very natural and works very well and actually gives life to people and actually, unifies people and actually, does healthy things. But in Mappo, it's a terrible thing. It's a terrible, terrible thing. But anyway, so I'm glad I lived in an era before that, so I can see both worlds. And I think you kind of have an advantage in many ways because of that. So, anyways, this is kind of part of living in Mappo, this cycle, of Mappo. But anyway, so coming back to what I was saying, so with so yeah, your normalcy bias, I think, as a Buddhist, you from early on, Buddhism alone should start weakening it. Uh, I think as a Buddhist, you shouldn't. You're from wherever you truly encounter the Dharma, that should already be weakening your normalcy bias, because of the teachings themselves about how samsaric existence, the nature of samsaric existence, that should already be beginning to break down. If you really take that in, that should already be breaking down your normalcy bias. So, so mine's been my normalcy bias has been weakening and breaking down for a very long time, decades. At least since the early to mid 80s, I would say. That's when it began, just before I really started to read and explore Buddhism. It started to break down because of the causes and conditions of my own life, and no doubt that was the working of Amida to start opening my eyes to things before I even knew it. The light was there. But there's certain causes and conditions and situations and events in my life. At that time, I started to see through a lot of stuff. The church community I was in, my family, the broader kind of local community. I was unfortunately brought up in. Fortunately, in some senses, actually, it's again, this comes back to that mixture of my karmic causes and conditions. I have some very fortunate causes and past causes and conditions, very unfortunate. So in some ways, I was very fortunate to be raised where I was. In other ways, very unfortunate. But anyway, that's when it started weakening. And again, I think there was skill and means involved there through Amida to start opening my eyes even before I started exploring Buddhism. That's probably what took me to Buddhism, actually. That pain, that suffering moved that desire for something else to understand, that desire to understand, moved me toward Buddhism. So it's all skill and means. It's all Amida, all the working of Amida, all the light of Amida. But anyway, so a long time, my normalcy bias has been breaking down and weakening, and and that's what holds a lot of people. A lot of people now in this cycle of Mappo, know something's really badly wrong. And there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of anger about, let's just say, world events and world leadership, so-called world leadership, and about various deceptions, inveiglements, and if that's a word, and obscurations that are coming to light that have been, in place for decades, even centuries. And so people are to some extent, but even but I find that people still, even whether they're just anxious about these times that we live in, and still are pretty much a conventional person, just going about their family life and job and trying to make it, trying to get along, trying to make it, try to keep their head down. They're anxious. They know something's wrong. Lots wrong in the world, about the events going on in the world, but they still are in a normalcy bias. They still think that somehow our lives are going to be going on as they always have from this point. And I'd say that's most people. Like most people, even so that's all. Or I should say, it's a lot of people. And then there's, or most people, and then there's people that are kind of quote unquote waking up to all this that's going on in the world and been going on in the world for decades and centuries and things. And kind of, or even they're not even awake to the centuries aspect of it, but they're awake to kind of the more, more recent events and more maybe recent decades of events, and how things just waking up to all that. Even though even people that are so-called waking up to it all, they're still in a normalcy bias. They still think that somehow at the stage of what's happening in the world, things are just going to go, their lives are just going to go on the way we go on, go to work, job, family, going out, doing things at the weekend or not, but whatever their sort of normal everyday lives are, they think that's going to be going on in the next several years, and it ain't. It just ain't. And but even people that are awake to these things still are in that normalcy bias. It's amazing to me. It's really amazing to me, but it shouldn't be, because that's samsaric existence. That's our ignorance. That's our ignorance. Without Buddhism, without the light of Amida, that's our ignorance. That's the ignorance of the world we live in. That's the ignorance of samsaric existence. That's the ignorance that keeps you stuck in just the habituated mindset that you're in, and it's very strong. It's very strong. So it shouldn't surprise me. Actually, in that sense, it doesn't surprise me, but it's still remarkable. I guess the word, but more of a better word than surprise. Not really surprise me, but it's more like remarkable. It's quite remarkable, the extent of it that I see people are in. I barely can have conversations with people about anything to do with what's going on in the world, because they just first of all, it's so polarized, and people have just so many opinions and such strong opinions, and they usually hone in on one thing, or it's just so twisted the way they see it. And I just barely can talk to anybody. There's very few people that I can talk to about this stuff. So anyway, and one of the things is people, even if they're awake, or even most people are not really awake to this aspect of it, and even if they are awake, they still don't quite get the full extent of it. And that's the way that it all operates. I've made a previous video about this, alluding to this, but there's two movies that really encapsulate how it actually works. How power, politics, corruption, the clubs, as I call them, the clubs that, run everything in the world, and manipulate everything for their own ends. There's two movies that really symbolically just, are perfect at just kind of displaying that, or illustrating how it works. And one of them is Gangs of New York. If you haven't ever seen Gangs of New York, or if you have seen it, watch it again, or watch it for the first time, with all the stuff that's going on in the world in mind. Because it's I don't know how historically accurate some of it is, or kind of culturally accurate some of it is, but the broad strokes of it I think are spot on. The broad strokes of it, if you watch it on a symbolic level, it's exactly the model for how power and influence and and um, uh, all of that works. Politics, society, um, culture. It just completes a perfect model that's been going on for centuries, actually. Um, Not just now, based, and always adjusted to obviously the the karmic and causes and conditions of the time. So these 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 manipulative, corrupt, greedy, power hungry ways of power are in keeping with times and with beings in a very Mara kind of way, I guess you could say. Very Maric kind of way. To keep people in it. It keeps people all in this certain paradigm. It moves people across the planet to different places or across the lands, wherever they need them. Whatever lands they want to take and wherever lands they need to bring more people in to do the dirty work, to do the labor, to serve in the militaries, to whatever they need it for. They move people from one land to another, and they either on purpose or they take advantage of that's done through wars. It's done through famines. And all those things come about, but all of them are manipulated. There's been ways where this has been going on for a long time. They starve people out. They starve lands out. They starve whole whole lands out. So this is going back centuries. They use these, or they take advantage of events happening to move people to another place because they need their labor. They need them in their militaries. They need them in their whatever. And it's just a perfect, and it's happening right to this day. It's happening right to this day. Event, and this is happening centuries back, right up to this day. Or events are orchestrated to bring these movements of people about, or or events are taken advantage of to do that, or the movements of these people are used, that maybe don't come about through orchestration, but through other situations, and they just take advantage of that. But it's just the way, if you watch those movies and how the movement of people, the movement of people across the globe, across lands, and how the criminality of the land where they're coming to is used to maintain control, not just of the people, the moving people, but also just in general, even aside from the movement of people, the criminality underlying the culture works with the power structure, works with the powers that should not be, as it were, the powers that be. The criminality and their model is a criminal model, is a model. It's not they give you the face of politics and propaganda and what's the word I'm looking for? It gives you the face of it, It gives you the theatrical face of it. And that's all whatever the power structure is, that, on the outside, it's the democracy and, elected officials and the bureaucracy, or if it's not a democratic society or times, then it's the king, and there's this, and this is this is looks like it works this way, but what's and that the power of king comes from this or that or the other thing, when it's actually it's actually based on just criminality. It's based on criminality, violence, manipulation, and fear. And this is especially in a declining kalpa. It gets worse and worse in the declining kalpa, and then especially when you reach Mappo. In the later point of the, in the Turbidities kalpa, that's been going on for a long time before Mappo, it's gotten worse and worse. So the same model of power is there. And it's just especially worse and more obvious the closer you get to Mappo. And in Mappo, it's just an obvious thing. If Amida is lighting your, if you've encountered the light of Amida, and Amida is illuminating this stuff for you, you can see it. And it's all in that movie, The Gangs of New York. You should watch it and just look at it as a symbolic means of how power operates, of how it operates, how the whole thing operates. And it hits you like a diamond bullet right here as you're watching it. To quote another movie that involves power on a whole nother level, Apocalypse Now. But anyway, that's a very Mappo film. That's another good one for how power works actually too. But anyway, so watch it with that. Watch it with the Turbidities kalpa in mind and Mappo in mind as a model for how it's a model for how power operates for centuries. Dependent on the karmic cause conditions of that time, how that actually, the details of how it plays out are going to be a little bit different, but it is the model. It is the model for how it works. It completely is. And and that's going back centuries, and bring it right up to forward. But if you watch it with that in mind, I'm telling you, it will, that diamond bullet moment. Boom. And then also another movie, and I mentioned this in videos before too, is John Wick. The John Wick franchise. That is such a perfect on a symbolic level, how it works, how the world, how politics, how power, money, all that stuff actually functions. And the high table, the high table being the clubs I talk about that run everything in the world, and the way that the different rules and consequences that are in place, they can both control people through corruption. People are controlled through corruption, and controlled through information that others have on them, blackmail, corruption, all that stuff. They're controlled by that, and there's consequences for stepping outside, because because it's all based on criminality. It's all criminality underlying it all, from on the level of where they're pretending to be fine upstanding politics and fine upstanding governments and fine upstanding whatever, and that this is just it's just conventional businesses, corporations, and it's just and big pharma, and it's all just but underlying it all, it's criminality. It's criminality. It's run like mafias. It's especially in the Turbidities kalpa, especially in Mappo, it's all mafias. It's all a big, giant, global network of mafias that are run by the clubs. And so the high table is like it's a perfect metaphor or symbolism for how it actually works, how the whole world actually works. All the stuff in it. all the stuff, all the different factions, all the, the different, and the consequences, because you need to have very strict consequences if somebody steps out of line, because it is all based on criminality and corruption. You have to have very severe consequences for people that don't go by the rules, don't go by the. Otherwise, it'd just be mayhem. It would just be utter chaos, and that would not benefit the clubs, the powers that be, or the powers that should not be, as some might put it. But I think we deserve the powers that be. We're born in Mappo. We're born in Trapedi's Kalpa. We're born in Mappo, where we have the karmic causes and conditions to be born at this time. We deserve it. We deserve to have these, powers that be. We deserve it. It's part of our karmic causes and conditions, both individually and collectively. But it's just how it works. That is so perfectly symbolic. And in both films, you have actual, like, the underworld going on, gangs, criminality, kind of mafia, like actual, the gross level mafias and gangs, and you have that in both those films. That's what's there, and you have that in the real world too. You've got that, the criminal undergrounds, the criminal mafias and organized crime, the syndicates and the oligarchs, oligarchies. All of this, all of it works together. All of it's intertwined. All of it works together. It's all part of the network. From the highest levels down to that grosser actual criminality, the gangs, all that stuff. It's all part of the same network. It is, and that's just that's just the way it is. That's Mappo, man. That is Mappo. Been spending all my life in a Mappo nightmare, something like that. Anyway, so that is what it's like. If that, I hope that doesn't offend anybody's sensibilities. I hope you don't think I'm on some kind of, political side with this, with me having these, views, me seeing these things. I'm not on some political side with this, because I see the bullshit of both. The left-right paradigm, first of all, is part of the bullshit, is part of the kabuki theater that I've talked about in other videos, and I'm talking about right now. The kabuki theater, the left-right paradigm is part of that. Is all part of that bullshit. And each of the mainstream parties that are on the left or right are just part of that dance, that part of that kabuki theater dance. That's total bullshit. It's totally fake. It's totally part of the control mechanism in place. I'm moderate in most of my views. I lean left with some things and right with some things. But I don't. I don't really side with either of them. They each have just horrible stuff about them. And I've seen them. I see them for what they are. I grew up in one side of it. I grew up in the Christian right wing. Basically, I grew up in that. Unfortunately, but that was my karmic causes and conditions. I deserve to go through that, but I've seen what that is. I've seen what that's like from the inside. I've seen, they claim all these values and that they're fighting for these certain values and stuff, but I've seen what goes on in the church I grew up in, the fundamentalist church I grew up in, all of the just I've seen it. People sleeping with each other, the hypocrisy, I've seen it. I know what goes on, and worse things, really morally corrupt things going on, and the greed in it. I've seen the greedy people, the power struggles, the pettiness within this so-called Christian right wing. I've seen it from the inside out. So I see the bullshit of that as well as the bullshit of the left. They're very different, but they're both very problematic at best, as far as I'm concerned. And I think most people are probably fairly moderate, leaning one way or the other. It's just the minority of people that go really to extremes. In some sense. But anyway, I don't know if this is going to be one for the Mappo life or every Bombu's got one. Might be every Bombu's got one. This goes into. But yeah, I can't, and that's because of the light of Amida. I can see all that. I can see all the BS of both extremes of left and right, and the uniqueness of the bullshit of each side of that. It's all because of the lights of Amida, and because I reflect deeply on all this stuff. And it's because of Buddhism. Because of Buddhism. I can't see you being anything but moderate. I can't see a Buddhist being anything but a moderate. And probably on fiscal economic things I lean left, when it comes to that, the fiscal economic things. But when it comes to left of center, but when it comes to things like individual responsibility for one's own karmic causes and conditions, and one's own life, and one's own behavior, thoughts, words, and deeds, I'm right-leaning in that sense. When it comes to law and order, I'm right-leaning. When it comes to ethical behavior, moral behavior, I'm probably right-leaning with that. When it comes to traditional ways, versus progressive ways or modern ways of doing things, I'm probably right-leaning with that. So, but it's all left and right of center. That I am. When it comes to an environmental things, I'm left-leaning. When it comes to certain things that this is one of the aspects of being a Buddhist. Not just that you wind up toward the middle, kind of moderate, but moderate kind of in your views. You tend to, at least I do. You tend to be pragmatic as well about certain things, and so with certain, with that pragmatism, when it comes to, certain things, I'm more left-leaning, probably, just from a pragmatic standpoint. Given that we live in Mappo, we don't live in ideal conditions. We don't. This is the most unideal conditions in samsaric existence that you could live and be. Is these times the most unideal, the most any time in Mappo, it's like going to be and the further you get into Mappo, the more unideal they're going to be. So you kind of have to go, okay, this is what the Buddhism teaches. This is what this is what the social teachings in Buddhism. This is the social teachings in the ethical teachings in Buddhism, the social and ethical teachings from our Dharma masters, from Honen, Shinran, and Renyo, and take those, and then you look at the world and say, yes, the ideal thing would be this, you know, health wise, and for lessening harm, and for encouraging the Dharma, or or encouraging healthiness and happiness in the true sense of the word, and peace, then certain ethical things would be ideal, but we live in Mappo. So you kind of have to adjust that to Mappo. You have to adjust those, what would be least harmful, more helpful, more healthy, more happiness, supportive of. You have to kind of look and go, okay, got it. You have to adjust. And so that probably in those areas I'm more left leaning, or libertarian leaning, I should say, as well, for those kinds of things. Whereas other things are more like, well, and then the other pragmatic side is the law and order bit. The right leaning bit is, because we live in Mappo, people are nuts. People are, corrupt. People are unethical, immoral. So you have to be tough in some sense. Yeah, there's certain things you have to be really tough about in kind of enforcing. So that's another pragmatic thing. But all of this too, and I've talked about this before in another video, is the pragmatism comes in because of what I was talking about for most of this video, of the reality of how the world actually operates in politics and society and nations and the globe and the world. That's how it operates. So you kind of are like, well, I have to adjust all my political, social, and ethical views to that reality and kind of work within that. You know what I mean? You got to kind of fit it to like that, and do your civic duty and responsibilities of trying to be a good citizen and voting or whatever it is for your society that makes you a responsible, contributing member of society. You still need to try to do that, even though you know the context in Mappo of how all that stuff actually operates. So that's another pragmatic aspect of applying, Buddhist ethics and Buddhist social teaching and how to view politics and that sort of stuff. And this kind of makes me think of another aspect of this that I wanted to talk about. Now it's gone from, I was trying to finish that other point. See if I can bring it back. So the pragmatic, oh yeah, that's the other thing I remember now. So another aspect of how things actually work in the, is, so basically another aspect of this is, if you look at that, especially in Mappo, but in general, in samsaric existence, samsara is a prison of sorts. We're imprisoned in samsara, in the cycle of samsaric existence, of death and birth, we're imprisoned by our karma causes and conditions, we're imprisoned by our ignorance. We don't see reality as it actually is, so we're imprisoned in samsara, and that's because of that. In that sense, we're imprisoned because of our attachments and aversions, our anger and our greed, or you could call it, we're imprisoned by all that. We're imprisoned by our bono, our blind extreme attachments, blind extreme desires and attachments and cravings, blind extreme aversions and hatreds, or anger about whatever. But we're imprisoned by our kleshas. We're imprisoned to the very last moment of life, as Shinran says. So it's a kind of prison, and so it stands to reason that in all ages of samsara, to some degree, the way things actually operate are on a certain level a criminality to a lesser or greater degree, depending on the position in a declining kalpa you're in, or depending on the position in a ascending kalpa you're in. You're going to be, it's kind of criminality is how it operates. If you think of a prison, that's who's in prison, who you're in prison with. I've never been in prison, I've never been in jail. But if a person is in prison, they're in there because of criminality, unless they've been falsely accused and falsely prosecuted and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, most people in prison are in there because of criminality of some description, of some reason. And so this is criminality, that the whole thing is based on criminality, is based on this power structure, this hierarchy that is exactly the same as what happens in the broader society, is this hierarchy of power and networks of power. And you kind of have to, there's a pressure in prison. You kind of have to go with one group or another for your own protection, for your own survival in a prison. If you're in a prison, you have to align with some group or other and be part of that group, whatever it might cost you, personally or whatever. You have to align with that group or you will not survive. You have to align with your in-group, whatever that's based on. I won't get into the specifics of that, but you can kind of, we know how that operates, how prison gangs operate, how prison groupings operate along different, grouping lines. All right, we'll say, just to keep it, general. We'll do it that way. Just in case I don't want to offend anybody, or I don't want, my video to get a hit for something that I didn't intend at all. So, but you have to do that, and so symbolically, in samsaric existence, you kind of have to do that too. You're in a prison situation, you're pressured to do that. There's pressure to do that for survival, for practical living, for being able to get along on a day-to-day basis in prison. You have to align yourself with one group or another. And so it's similar in samsaric existence, in your own society, in your own community, in your own nation, whatever you're in, or your culture. You have to align with some group or another. There's a pressure to that, and you just naturally do that. That's part of samsaric existence. You just naturally do that. You identify with that. So for me, the way I do that is I align with Buddhism. I align with Buddhists. I'm a big tent Buddhist. I align with all of Buddhism in the world. That's my grouping. That's what I align with. Primarily, that's my alignment. With the broad Buddhist Sangha and my local Buddhist Sangha and the overall Buddhist Sangha of, talking celestially, on a multiverse level, and also including all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and that's what I identify with. That's my group. That's my in group. Is the Sangha. Is Buddhism. Is the Buddhist Sangha. Is Buddhism. That's what I align with, and so that's what I identify with more, than family, more than society, more than friend groups, more than I just don't, on the samsaric stuff that cause people to align with those conventional aspects of life. I just don't. It's not been there for me for a long time, and so I aligned with Buddhism. That's my in group. That's my in the most positive sense, gang that I align with, to survive in samsaric existence, to survive in the prison of samsaric existence. That's what I'm just checking the time on my phone, how long it's been. But that's the gang, quote unquote, in the most positive sense, the group that I align with to survive, to make my samsaric prison experience the best it could be. Nothing else will do that. Anything else in samsara, if I align with anything else as that group, my in-group with samsara, in samsara existence, will make things worse. For me, only aligning with Buddhism makes it better. And anywhere where I align with anything else in life, it's kind of, there's karmic causes and conditions behind that, obviously. So I naturally will be aligning with, I obviously love my family. I love the members of my family. I'm connected to them, through familial bonds, both genetically and by marriage. And so, that's there, obviously. I'm not some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not devoid of those things. I'm not trying to say I'm devoid of those things or above those things, or do you see what I mean? That's still there. And I still have friendships. I still have friend group. I've had friend groups. I've always had certain friend groups over the years, different friend groups. Not very long, over the long haul lasting, until recent years, until the past, I'd say 20 years maybe. I've not really had any long term friendships before that. But I still, so I still have all that. Obviously, I'm a human being, I'm in samsara, so you're going to naturally have those things, but they are not my primary thing that gives me meaning, that gives me hope, that helps my life. They've been a significant part of that, I will say, actually, since I married my wife. That's actually, I think there's karmic causes and conditions there that are very good, because my life has transformed, since marrying my wife, and my life now to this stage, it's been really transformed by all of that. So, I think there's some good causes from the past, good causes and conditions in our relationship, in my karmic causes, my karmic relations with that family, with my, with the family that I've married into, the broader family, extended family of that. I think I have, there's some good karmic relations there. And obviously I think there's the working of Amida somehow in all of this, the working of Amida's vow in all of this to transform my life. So obviously that's all there, but the guiding group, the guiding primary in-group is always going to be Buddhism. And secondarily these things, and then tertiarily, so secondarily would be family and friends, as far as people or groups I align with, and then tertiarily, or whatever that word is or is pronounced, would be the to some degree. It's tough though with political alignments, because of my views are on left and the right. It never comes out as if you do those political surveys and things and political tests and political quizzes, I never come out as, Democrat or Republican, or in the American sense, or in the UK, I never come out as Labour or conservative, neither of those. In fact, percentage-wise, I'm kind of 70 to 75% kind of aligned with all that, with both in some way. But where I'm more like 80% aligned is usually with a more third party kind of group, a third party kind of thing. So in America, that would be something like the American Solidarity Party, which is similar to it's kind of inspired by or similar to the Polish um, Solidarity Party, but I think there's significant differences. But um, and it's not, and when it's American Solidarity, by it being called American Solidarity Party, it's not like an America First thing at all. It's not, that party is not like that at all. So it's just American because they're trying to say, it's solid. They would probably have just called it Solidarity Party, but they want to distinguish it that it's, solidarity with American characteristics, as it were. You know what I mean? It's solidarity, in the American culture, in the American sense, not American solidarity as in America First or America, America, F yeah. No, not like that. Not like that at all. It's just saying it's solidarity within the context of American culture. So I just want to make that very clear to anybody. And yeah, that's a left-leaning party. So I'm about over 80% probably aligned with them. But the 15 to 20% difference is probably a pretty significant differences that I have with the party. And it's similar in the UK politics. I'm not aligned with the Conservative or Labour, the two major parties, or even there's a third party that used to be almost a third kind of major party, which is the Lib Dems. I'm not aligned with them either. I'm actually more aligned with the Scottish National Party in the UK. That's how it comes out in these political surveys. One in particular, but like 80%, like almost 80% aligned with that one, and it's kind of it's a social democratic party. It's a social democratic kind of party. But has some very pragmatic views and pragmatic kind of aspects to things. So it kind of fits with the stuff I've been saying about my own left, moderate left-right kind of leanings. Anyway, so that's how it comes out. So so that's about the closest I can come. The closest I come to aligning with anything. Any political party is about 80%. I'm never more than that aligned with anything. And most of the mainstream parties in any given nation, but just looking at UK, Canada, like the more Western societies, I never align with the major mainstream left-right kind of parties. I'm more with one of the third parties, and that's just a consequence of being a Buddhist and Amita's light. Because you can't, once you see stuff, you can't just operate in that conventional sense anymore. So anyway, I've covered a lot of ground in this one. This probably is going to be Bombu. Every Bombu's got one kind of a video, I think. But thanks for listening. I covered a lot of topics that I've been wanting to cover for a long time in a video. I'm just grateful that I have Jodo Shinshu, I have Amita, I have Amita's light, and I have that teaching, and I have all this guidance to guide me through all this, because I can't imagine doing this without Jodo Shinshu. Now I can't imagine Jodo Shinshu Buddhism without Buddhism, or Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. I can't imagine going through life trying to navigate all this stuff. So thanks very much for listening, and I hope you're well. I hope you're realizing how embraced by Amida you are, and I think we'll just finish this with some Nambutsu. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu. All right. Thanks very much. Take care until next time.